I was reading through some of my journal the other day, and it was journal I had when my son was hospitalized, when JT was hospitalized. And I kind of used to write things down so I could remember things and try to help me work through some things and maybe figure out a way how I can be the best help that I could be. Some of the stuff I read, it kind of brought back a lot of memories to me that I kind of had forgotten about. It's probably a good thing I forgot about some of them, but I'm going to tell you something I was reading about. JT at one point was in the hospital, and he had this roommate that was really intrusive. And this roommate of his was like provoking him. He was following me around. Every time I went to visit JT, he'd follow me, and he wouldn't leave me alone. And JT became upset about it because the guy was really a nuisance. And so I talked to the social worker about it at the hospital, and I was hoping that they would, not have them be in the same room together because JT was totally opposite of this person. But I also know that hospital beds are probably not easy to come by sometimes. So I was really hoping that that he could get out of there, and I did. I talked about those kind of things. And anyway, so something happened. JT attacked him at one time because he was upset. The guy wouldn't leave me alone. He was upset about it. So then I thought JT was violent, and I said, my son is not violent at all. He just was, the guy just annoyed him, and he was trying to protect me, I guess. So anyways, when that happened, I think they decided that he wasn't going to come back to live with us. So this is kind of some of the conversations that led up to this. So I'd go into the hospital to see him, and sometimes he wasn't really okay with seeing me. And I was trying to get a durable medical power of attorney signed in case he got sick, so I could get him to the hospital if he had something in writing that I could kind of help facilitate that. But he was very reluctant to sign anything like that. He was very private about things. He just didn't like anybody controlling him in any way. And I was kind of antsy about it, and I probably should have just let off on it because it really didn't make any difference when you get right down to it. Anyways, so Mike and I would go visit him sometimes, and Terry would visit him too separately when he was getting out of work or something. But Mike and I would go, and a lot of times JT didn't want, he wouldn't really give me a hug, like he didn't really feel really close to us. It was very sad. It was like he just didn't feel close to us. He was like a stranger in his own body, in his own mind. So, but when we did go to visit, sometimes he would, go give Michael a hug, and Michael couldn't really hug him back. So JT would lift up his arms and make him hug JT. So that was really nice. But so he'd call me and sometimes leave me a message when he'd bring me this at the hospital, bring me that, bring me a book, bring me some candy, bring me something, whatever. So I always would do that, and he'd, I'd bring him whatever he needed and all that stuff. The social worker was talking about sending him to some other hospital after when he was at Spring Harbor. So he was talking about maybe going from transferring to Riverview or Dorothea Dix, which is up around Bangor area, until he can get into the Shalom House in Portland or the Opportunity Alliance. I mentioned we would like him to eventually to be able to come home. And she said she was unaware that was an option for him. So that kind of, I didn't really understand that. And I think it was because of the incident of the hospital. Later I called him and we talked. I'm going to read you a little bit about what happened here. I asked if he had been talked to about taking injections, but he said no. He said pills are okay, but he didn't want to take injections. He didn't trust that stuff. Then he asked me if he'd be able to come home. I said we'd like that, but maybe he'd be happy to be at the Shalom House. He's fiercely independent. He seemed to have insight into knowing he may not be able to come home. That made me so sad. I had a hard night about that. I cried and cried, and I had an upset stomach. I had mentioned maybe he'd be going to another hospital, but I wasn't sure yet. I told him his friend Cody visited, and I was happy. I thanked Cody for being a friend to him. After I explained that JT had been struggling for a few years, his illness was like a brain injury, like kind of like a stroke victim, almost like his brain was very much affected. I told him he had been hospitalized very shortly after he got home from Florida, and Cody had been living in Florida at the time. After we talked, he seemed to want to hang up suddenly about the realization that he might not be able to come home soon. The social worker told me his thoughts are very frightening to him. I said I knew, and I thanked him for talking to me, to being med compliant and staying in the hospital a little bit longer. When I called him tonight, though, he was at the gym, and he called me with that conversation above. We had the conversation about if he was going to come home. So that kind of made me sad thinking about that kind of stuff. And I had written down, we visited for 20 minutes here and there. One time I went with my sister and my mom, and we visited him. And I can't remember, my mom knew somebody there at the hospital, and JT was kind of embarrassed, like it was almost like it was too small of a community for him. Someone that knew his family outside of the hospital. And my sister knew somebody at the hospital there too once, somebody in the cafeteria. So I told my son, I said, I'll just come and visit you by myself afterwards, because I didn't want to have him feeling uncomfortable at the hospital. I gave him the number for disability rights while he was there because I figured he would need that. He just would need it in case he needed someone to talk to if he was having problems at the hospital. I'm trying to think. Me and Terry were really concerned about, we just wanted to make sure that he got what he needed, He, it's just really hard, all the stuff that he was going through. He said, let me see, he called me, let me just see what he said here. He said that he was pretty exhausted because he had been taking medication and he was tired. So a few times I went to visit him, he was sleeping in the afternoon. So he tried really hard to try to do the best he could to take care of himself, but it didn't really feel natural, it didn't really feel natural to him. Anyways, I kind of was thinking about, I sometimes follow pages of people that have kids with disabilities, with mental illness stuff. I still follow that kind of stuff because I feel like maybe I can offer some information to somebody, maybe, or I don't know why I stay in touch with that kind of stuff because I really don't really need to anymore, I guess. But, this is one mom that's just trying to do everything she can do to, so her son doesn't end up dying, she's terrified about it. And I remember I had a conversation with JT once, and I said, do you think that I try to nail it down with him and just say, what do you think about, do you think that, you'll let me know if you feel like you're going to be suicidal or anything? He says, can you promise me that you won't do that, or you'll kind of let me know, or call somebody, and he told me, he said, Mom, I can't promise you that I'm never going to do something to myself. He goes, because I really don't know, Mom. So that was the reality of it. And I was kind of glad we had that conversation, even though it was a difficult one. I think you kind of have to have those conversations. So it's funny because I was looking through some stuff here because I had written letters and back and forth to the judge. We had tried for guardian. We were a guardian for a little while for JT to kind of help him get what he needed. And at one point, I sent the judge a note, and I told him that we were not going to go for guardianship again. We had an appointment to try it again, and I said my son wasn't being medicine compliant, so we couldn't really force him to do that. and he was wandering around, for a couple months. He took off, and so I realized that, there's really nothing we could do about it. That's the hardest part as a parent. You just do the best you can and try to be the best advocate you could be for your kids. But I got this whole book of things that I've written down, and some of it's really, really very, it's hard to read some of it because it just brought it all back to me. So that's all I want to talk about. Just the things that people have to go through. People go through. My son went through a lot more than I ever went through. And we just had to watch it happen, And all you can do is love your kids and listen to them, like I said in all the other videos. And I think it's about this again. Love, love, love. Okay, here's another one. Love, love, love. One more. Love. I'll always love my son. I love both my sons. But when you lose somebody, you feel like that's just, everything just ends. But that love is always there. You still will always love your son. Even though he's gone, you just love him in a different place. So that's all. Hope you guys have a good night. Thank you.